Welcome to Damn Good Movie Memories with your host, Brian Davis. This podcast is the cure for your long commute and super boring workday.
Meet a very private eye who scrutinizes every angle of his cases, from top to bottom. His name is Tony Rome.
Oh, yeah. He's going to be my next case.
His clients are both demanding and dangerous.
Are you sure you're working hard enough?
Me working hard enough? Do you notice since I took this job, I've had to turn down 2 offers to go to bed? And I never want to work that hard again. Never.
Frank Sinatra is Tony Rome.
Pussycat?
Someone's trying to poison her.
How do you know?
Her pussy used to be so sunny and full of fun, with the sweetest smile.
Miami Beach is his scene. The high spots
Don't you ever sleep in a bed?
and the low.
I'd like to buy some of your time.
So buy. It's 20 for starters. Right here? What are you, some kind of a nut? You shouldn't be undressing in front of him.
Tony Rome's women are too fast.
Don't tell me she hired you to find out how far it went between us.
How friendly were you?
Well, she walked into a bedroom and she found us together in a clinch.
I guess you could say I was pickup,
I could.
but I wasn't hustling, if that's what you mean.
I'd do just anything to get it back. Just anything.
I appreciate what you're offering, sweetheart, but I need the money more.
But Tony's horses are too slow.
Honest to God, you're hopeless. Do you know who that was on the phone?
My bookmaker.
This is supposed to be a police station. How do you think it looks, a bookie using our main switchboard?
The action's so fast. It's a wonder Tony Rome stays alive.
Look out! Look out!
And single. Frank Sinatra is Tony Rome.
Ring-a-ding-ding-ding.
Hey there, it's Brian Davis, and for this week's episode, we're going to cover the movie Tony Rome from 1967. The studio was 20th Century Fox, release date was November 10th, 1967. The running time, 110 minutes. Roger Ebert at the time gave it 3 out of 4 stars. Here's his review. I don't know what I expected from Tony Rome, but the news that Frank Sinatra was playing a Humphrey Bogart-type private detective wasn't exactly electrifying enough to lure me out to the Big Swingers preview. Surprisingly, however, Tony Rome is a detective story of the Bogart type, but Sinatra is no Bogart, which won't come as news, and Tony Rome is no the Maltese Falcon. But it plays the detective game by the rules, and that's something. In well-made detective movies, you have a plot, a real honest-to-goodness plot. No gimmicks, no neo-Nazi villains in underwater pads, no exploding cigarette lighters, just a detective who is a hard-working, hard-drinking guy who has been unlucky with dames and plays the horses and has a lot of cynical dialogue. The guy gets involved in a seemingly innocent job, like tracing somebody's lost husband or escorting a drunken daughter home to her millionaire daddy. Then it turns out that something valuable is missing. It can be a Maltese Falcon or a diamond ring or anything, just so that it's something that men will kill for. Cue the quavering violin and echo chamber. Then you have to have intrigue and physical danger and a few surprising plot twists. You have to have a sympathetic character or two. Really straight people who are trying to do the best thing, but their past is against them. Then you have the detective playing it tough and cynical and getting knocked around, but occasionally revealing a glimmer of human warmth in his heart. Tony Rome does this, And to call it a typical detective movie is not an insult. For about 3 years, Gaga directors have been throwing the plot overboard with complete disregard for the audience. But now Frank Sinatra makes a traditional detective movie, and Lee Marvin makes a traditional thriller with Point Break, and Peter Collinson makes a traditional shocker, The Penthouse, and suddenly audiences can engage their intelligence in the plots again. Sinatra turns in a nice, low-key performance. He's not the cool cat Bogart was, but he's good and he comes across. Richard Conte is fine in another standard role. The homicide detective who cleans up the bodies after the private eye's little sprees shakes his head and says, "I'm gonna have to lock you up if you don't produce the killers by tomorrow morning." And Jill St. John is luscious. The weakness in the movie is Sinatra's unwillingness to play it really straight. Bogart's movies always had anonymous settings. They took place in cities as unreal as Superman's Metropolis. Sinatra makes his in Miami Beach, however, and there's too much of the place in the plot. Also, too many Rat Pack buddies in minor roles. And don't detectives ever drink anything but Budweiser? And that's the end of Ebert's review. So when I was in college, I really took a deep dive into classic films. And when I say classic films, it was from the 1930s through the 1960s. It's not like the 70s weren't classic, but keep in mind, this would have been for me in the mid-1990s, so 20 years didn't seem that far away to me. In any case, hard-boiled detective movies always piqued my interest, hence the late 60s Sinatra films, where he played detective, seemed interesting enough to check out, and I did, and now they're in my collection. All right, let's get into the main cast. Of course, Frank Sinatra plays Tony Rome. I could do an entire episode just on Sinatra, which I'm not going to do here, but I also covered a bit of his career in the original Ocean's 11 episode from 1960. From that film until Tony Rome, his most notable films included The Manchurian Candidate, Robin and the Seven Hoods, and Von Ryan's Express. Now, Tony Rome would be the first of 3 films in a 2-year span where Sinatra played a tough detective. The next would be Lady in Cement with Raquel Welch, which was a direct sequel to Tony Rome. And then The Detective, which would be way ahead of its time with its subject matter as he investigates the murder of a gay man. Jill St. John plays Anne Archer. No, not the Anne Archer, who was an actress too in like the 70s and 80s. St. John, at this point, had appeared in a number of films throughout the early 1960s, along with TV shows. She did work with Sinatra previously in the 1963 film Come Blow Your Horn. She would go on to be best known for playing Tiffany Case in the final Sean Connery-era James Bond film, Diamonds Are Forever. Other notable actors in this film include Sue Lyon, who was best known for playing Lolita in the Stanley Kubrick 1962 adaptation. She was also in The Night of the Iguana in 1964 with Richard Burton, Ava Gardner, and Deborah Kerr. And as Ebert mentioned, Tony Rome also features the great character actor Richard Conte, and also Gena Rowlands. The director was Gordon Douglas. We covered one of his films in episode 375 for the 1954 sci-fi film Them, the one about giant ants. He also directed Sinatra in the other detective films that I already mentioned, along with Robin and the Seven Hoods and Young at Heart. All right, let's get into the making of the film. So Tony Rome is adapted from the 1960 novel Miami Mayhem, written by Marvin Albert. No, and like Ann Archer, it's not that particular Marv Albert, the basketball announcer. Yes! No. The sequel, Lady in Cement, was also an Albert novel adaptation. So by the late 1960s, film noir-type detective films were kind of making a comeback, and I've covered a few like Madigan with Richard Widmark and Henry Fonda, and then, of course, Marlowe with James Garner. There are 3 others that I'll cover at some point, which are Point Blank with Lee Marvin, which is excellent, along with Bullet, Steve McQueen, and then Harper with Paul Newman. Speaking of Harper, Sinatra wanted that role, but of course lost out to Paul Newman. All right, let's get into the film. Sadly, I don't have a ton of clips, so that's just yet another reason to go check out the film for yourself. So it opens in Miami with private detective Tony Rome, that's Frank Sinatra, sailing on his powerboat, which he also lives on. The opening credits song is performed by his daughter, Nancy.
Lock your daughters in. It's too late to talk to them, 'cause Tony Rome is out and about. And Tony Rome will get 'em if you don't watch out. Tony Rome will get 'em if you don't watch out. Pussycats that run astray, he will bring them back today, 'cause Tony Rome is out. you don't watch out. Tony Rome will find them if you don't watch out. Love is for those who have the time to. Rome is for those who are inclined to. Ladies' hearts or diamond rings are not very special things when Tony Rome is out and about. 'Cause Tony Rome will take 'em if you don't watch out. Tony Rome will take 'em if you don't watch out.
Tony was a cop but is no longer on the force. His ex-partner Ralph, played by Robert Wilkie, is a house detective for a hotel and calls Tony and asks him to do a favor. He wants Tony to take a drunk and passed out young woman from the hotel back to her house. Turns out her name is Diana, played by Sue Lyon. And she's the daughter of a wealthy businessman named Rudy Kosterman, that's Simon Oakland. Ralph wants it off the record to prevent any sort of press and notoriety. So Tony drops off Diana at her parents' very large estate, and then he meets an attractive divorced woman named Anne, played by Jill St. John. She's just attended a party at the Kostermans the night before. Tony gives Anne a ride home. Now, Anne is basically a party girl. She attends these parties for wealthy people nightly. During the car ride, we discover that Tony has a major gambling problem, which is also why he's single. When Tony arrives back to his boat that night, he's greeted by two men who want to know where a pin is being held. Tony has no idea, but that doesn't matter to the guys holding the guns. Tony is knocked out with some chloroform, his choice rather than being pistol whipped, and they ransack his boat. Diana arrives the next morning to find Tony passed out. He awakens and finds out why she's there. Turns out she wants her pin back, which is a diamond pin worth $5,000. Today, it'd be worth $46,000. So Diana hires Tony to find her pin since she doesn't want her father to find out. Tony goes back to the hotel to talk to Ralph, figuring that he's the one that stole the pin. Ralph says that he didn't, but he did take $50 from her purse. So Tony figures that Ralph's a dead end and decides to follow Diana. He finds her at a rundown shack giving money to a drunken woman. The woman's name is Lorna, played by Gene Cooper, but we don't know her relationship to Diana yet. So Tony goes to his office and he finds Ralph dead underneath his desk. He's shot in the head. Tony calls the police and then heads to the Kosterman estate to confront Rudy and his wife Rita, played by Gena Rowlands. He confronts them about the trouble he's been having ever since he became involved with Diana's problems. We find out a few things. Lorna is Diana's biological mother, which is Rudy's ex-wife. Tony also requests that Rudy use his influence to get the police off his back about his ex-partner being murdered in his office. So Lieutenant Dave Santini, that's Richard Conte, is constantly on Tony's back. In addition to Diana and Rudy, now Rita wants to hire Tony to find out anything upsetting about Diana. It's a complete mess. But being a degenerate gambler, Tony really needs the money, so he takes the jobs. Tony goes back to his houseboat and receives a package. Inside is Diana's diamond pin, sent from Ralph. Tony goes to a pawn shop that he knew Ralph frequented, and he finds out that this diamond pin is actually glass. It's not even a diamond. So Tony goes back to his office for some sleep, and he gets a visitor.
Are we alone?
Yeah, why? What does you have in mind?
I'm Mrs. Schuyler. I want to hire you.
Well, I'm afraid not. You see, I'm tied up on a case this week, maybe next week.
Oh, that'll be too late. My pussycat will be dead by then.
Your pussycat?
Someone's trying to poison her.
Well, how do you know?
From her attitude. She's nervous. She's terrified.
Well, you can't bank too much on the attitude of a pussycat.
Oh, when a pussy used to be so sunny and full of fun, with the sweetest smile.
You got a pussy that smiles?
No, that's just the point. She's frowning now. She knows. I tell you, she knows.
Well, I'm afraid I can't help you, Mrs. Schuyler.
Well, you could at least meet my pussy.
No, it's not possible. I can't meet your pussy, no. Why don't you try the Burns Agency? They specialize in pussy that won't smile.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Rowe.
So, while this last scene might seem out of place, and frankly it is, Sinatra was tired of the rampant censorship in films, and this is his way, by using the double entendre, of sticking it to the powers that be. But soon, films like Bonnie and Clyde and Rosemary's Baby, Hollywood would be changed forever. After the woman leaves, Diana arrives.
Mr. Rome, have you found my pin yet?
No, but I'm close.
How can you get close lying here on a couch?
Look, sweetheart, if you don't like the way I operate, get yourself a new boy.
I'm sorry, it's just that I'm worried.
You got a cigarette?
No.
Figures. Your mother, Lorna, how often do you bankroll her? Oh, I work sometime.
She needs money. I try to give her what I can for my allowance.
You still get an allowance?
Well, Donald's still learning the business, and Daddy doesn't pay him much yet. So he gives me a little extra.
And you slip it to Mommy. What about Boyd? Does he ever come up with any groceries?
He used to be a nice person. It's just that, well, people change. They don't always turn out the way you hope.
Oh, I know. You should see my baby pictures. Tell me something, what insurance company handles your jewelry?
It's next to check out the insurance company, where Tony finds out that Rudy has jewelry insured for $400,000 for his wife and $100,000 for his daughter. Tony goes to a shady independent jeweler who does things like removing real stones for fake. The reason is usually for husbands who need quick cash, but they don't want their wives to know. And the vast majority of the time, the glass is never suspected by the wives. After almost getting killed by a jewelry fence, but Tony actually kills them himself, he arrives back to his boat to find Diana passed out drunk in his bed.
Where are we?
You're on your way home, again. Listen, I think we better get something straight. Next time you decide to go out on a drunk, why don't you pick a nice, comfortable gutter?
I wasn't drunk. I got sleepy.
Oh. Bottle sleepy.
I was upset about something. I had to see you.
If it's about Ann Archer and your husband, you can forget it. I can take her off the market, no charge. Home.
Tony drops off Diana at the Kosterman estate. Tony discusses what he knows to Rudy, mostly about the jewelry insurance and how the stones have been replaced by glass. It could be Diana, could be Rita, could be Diana's husband, or maybe someone else. So Tony decides to see Anne, who's at the beach.
Well, Tony Rome. Don't you ever sleep in a bed?
Who's Nemo?
A fellow I met. He bought a few drinks I paid for.
Come on, I'll spring for a couple.
I thought you were broke.
I got a little money from Customer and his daughter.
You getting interested in her?
She's all right. Nice hair, teeth, some good-looking odds and ends.
If you mean her figure, she bought part of it. I'll bet on it.
You'll lose. Don't get excited. I looked, but I didn't touch. 2 beers, Smitty.
Thanks for the choice.
How long you known Nemo?
4 or 5 months. I haven't seen him lately, though.
I understand you took him to the Customer's one night. Did he get friendly with anybody in the family?
No, Rita chilled him.
Rita?
Yes, so we left early.
I sure would like to find him.
I can't help you. He used to have an apartment in town, but he moved.
Well, he couldn't have moved to nowhere. He's got to have an address.
Somebody might be able to help you at the Floridora Club. He used to go there a lot.
Floridora Club. How about you get dressed? I take you out.
I wish I were dumb enough to believe this was a social invitation.
It is, it is.
The Floridora Club, right?
Good a place as any.
Oh, I love the way I get dates. Not my sexy legs or my charm. Somebody's address.
When you're ready, wake me. I'll be right over there.
Nemo never did say what he did. I guess he was a gangster or something shady. He wanted to marry me at first.
You weren't very choosy, were you?
Women can't afford to be. I learned that early. I started out wanting to marry a man who was handsome, rich, and witty. I got all of it. It took me 3 husbands to do it. Hello.
Hi, Miss Archer. You wanted to see me?
Matt Tully, Tony Rome.
Hi.
Matt owns the place. My friend here is looking for Nemo.
He hasn't been in lately.
You know where he lives?
He's a good customer. I don't ask questions.
You think he's from out of town?
I suppose. Most people in Miami have a return ticket to somewhere.
Say, miss, come here a minute. You know a guy named Nemo?
Yes, I think I do.
Good. Check your files to see if there's a snapshot of him in there. He's an old friend of mine.
All right.
Have fun, kids. Make it while you're young.
All right, there's about 45 minutes left and plenty of questions to answer. Now look, this is a fun late 60s detective mystery, and if you're a fan of Sinatra, this is kind of a cool character that he played. Granted, he was probably a bit too old to play this role, but he does fine, and look, his presence alone is worth it. All right, some fun facts. So Deanna Lunn, who played the lesbian stripper, she was embarrassed by the role, and she actually asked for her name to be removed from the credits. Stella Stevens actually turned down the role that went to Jill St. John. Stevens actually had a one-time date with Frank Sinatra a few years prior. He was looking for a relationship with a woman not interested in a career of her own, and he basically spent the entire date trying to talk Stevens into giving up hers. It was their first and last date, and she didn't want to work with him. Tiffany Bowling, who had a small uncredited part, had a short relationship with Frank Sinatra after they met during filming. She was 18, he was 51. Who said the thrill is gone. She ended up leaving him when she fell in love with an out-of-work actor. Years later, she admitted she regretted ending it because Sinatra was a fabulous human being, and he could have actually helped her career. But she was young and had no clue what she was doing. Michael Romanoff, who plays Sal in the film, the host of the restaurant on the pier, was actually the proprietor of the famous Romanoff's restaurant in Beverly Hills, which was a major meeting place and restaurant for celebrities from the 1930s through its closure in the early 1960s. All right, we have a special guest, and that is Lindsay, who has, of course, never seen Tony Rome. I don't know if she's seen actually many Frank Sinatra films, so this was a good kind of barometer for her to see if she likes Sinatra or his films, and she does like film noir or neo-noir and detective films, so let's get her take on if she likes Tony Rome or not. And then I'll be back next week to talk about yet another random movie from my DVD collection. All right, welcome back, and we have our special guest, who has never seen this particular movie. Actually, have you ever seen a Frank Sinatra movie? And it's Lindsay, by the way.
Hi, everybody. I love being special. That's nice. Thank you.
Yes.
I don't think I have. Wait a minute. Did we see a movie at Christmas this past year at the Stanford Theater where he was in it? I know there was a Bing Crosby.
And Danny Kaye.
But not
him?
him?
No, not Sinatra.
Okay, then it might be a first.
So when you think of Frank Sinatra, what is your view? Like, what comes to mind when you first think Frank Sinatra for at least the movies, or do you think of him as a singer?
I think of Rat Pack. I think of, I think of his music. I think of my grandparents and his music. I think of him sitting around like in an old steakhouse with all the other Rat Pack people having like inane conversations. But yeah, I guess that's kind of it. I guess I don't think of him traditionally, like my first thought isn't actor. Like it's not the first thing that comes to mind. Though I know he acted, I don't think of that first.
So do you think he was, I mean, they basically built this film around him. He is by far the star. He's in almost, I think, every scene too. So double question here. Do you think he was right to play this role? And did you actually like him as the main star?
I mean, it kind of seems like who he was. It's almost like he played himself, except instead of being a singer, he was like a private eye that was once a cop, cop turned private eye. It's kind of how I pictured his personality to be anyway, not even knowing anything about him. So I guess if you're like, hey, how was he in this film? I'd say, Well, it seems like someone just put a camera on him and he did what he was going to do anyway, except he's not really a PI. So I guess I would say that. And I mean, the film has some cheese to it, let's be honest. It's definitely a little bit cheesy at times. But, I mean, it does kind of seem like what I picture him to do. So on that front, I mean, it does seem like the shoe fits.
Did you enjoy him, though?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of liked his demeanor around being a PI. Like, you know, he is working with these like really wealthy, very connected people, and his attitude is more like, you need me more than I need you, so you're going to do this for me. Like, he's driving the narrative, and he's sort of commanding the price, and he's kind of controlling the situation for the most part. So I like that he's doing that. I kind of like people like that. It's kind of like my dad. So I appreciate the way he didn't pander to people who seemed like they were bigger than him or whatever. So I like that he did that. That was a cool part of his personality.
It's interesting because there's a narrative that, yes, he seems like the smartest guy in the room, but he's flawed because he admits it. He's a derelict gambler. Now, you know, he basically he wins a couple times, but as you know, most gamblers don't win. You don't win. You lose more than you win.
You do.
And so I think the reason he probably isn't more successful at whatever he's done, he has this crutch that he can't kind of shake, but they kind of almost make light of it in the film.
Oh, it's kind of like a tertiary plot or something like that. It's so buried underneath it, but you hear him making calls to bookies and talking about it.
It's almost comic relief, though.
It's probably why, I mean, I assume that this is another reason that he reminds me of my dad's. I mean, he probably did like living on a boat. There's probably aspects of doing that he enjoyed. My dad loved it. But, I mean, he didn't really live on it, but he was on it all the time. But at the same time, I thought to myself, maybe he couldn't afford anything else because he was gambling all his money away. Like, this might be the only thing he could do.
Right.
You know, so I think there's this duality to him where I think he kind of does as he pleases and lives as he wants and runs on his own terms. But at the same time, there's like this devil on the shoulder that's probably driving some of the necessity for those, like, decisions. So you're right, he is flawed. It's obvious that's the flaw.
I think I mentioned to you as we were watching this, and you're starting to watch more kind of Bogart kind of noir films. To me, this was kind of like a nod to Bogart. He kind of had that tough guy, hard-boiled, but the dialogue was really good in this. Like, there were some really funny lines that were kind of sharp, dry-witted. So how did you like that, and how did you like the plot? Was the plot too convoluted? How did you like it?
I thought that the dialogue was pretty good. That was probably better than I thought it would be because it was kind of film noir-y, and I'll get into one aspect of my sort of shock around this film in a minute. But I did appreciate the fact that this was like a kind of fast-talking. It reminded me of some of the film noir that we've watched, like the Bogarts and I'm going to forget his name, but the guy that we just saw.
Edward G. Robinson.
Not Edward G. Robinson, but we had just
Fred
seen
McMurray?
Fred McMurray.
Yeah.
I thought he did a really, in Double Indemnity, he sort of had a smooth talking, insurance guy kind of thing going on, and I felt like...
Like Johnny Dollar.
Yeah. Oh, God. I love Johnny Dollar, but that's because of you. I did think that was pretty interesting. You had another question.
Did you like the plot?
The plot.
Was it too convoluted?
I do think the plot was a little convoluted. I'm not going to lie.
Most of these are, though.
It was what seemed a little bit unnecessary. It was what seemed kind of unnecessarily complicated. However, I think one of the reasons it might have been like that is because it was almost maybe going for that, like, frenetic all over the place kind of thing. Please don't, anybody listening, I'm not making a comparison between these films because there's like literally no comparison between them, except that this frenetic thing they do kind of felt similarly, like when I was watching them kind of go from this scene to scene to scene, not the way they shot it, but just like some other random thing to some other random thing to some, I had this like Uncut Gems vibe going on. Like it was just like, I couldn't always keep track of what exactly was happening, and it was keeping me like uncomfortable on purpose. And I kept thinking it's doing this weird, wait, what about this thing with her parents? And wait, what about this thing with the pin? And then wait, what about, this thing with this lady who supposedly, is like this tramp lady that did, it was like so much stuff. I thought about that Uncut Gems movie with Adam Sandler. I was like, oh my God, that one literally gave me like agita watching it. And this was kind of doing the same thing. But it's nowhere like a similar film at all.
So Sinatra is definitely the main star again. He's in probably every single scene. So let's get into some of the other cast. How did you like Jill St. John playing? She's kind of a love interest, but she's also part of the plot because she was at the party. How did you like her character?
She was good in it. It was a little bit weird because she's this supposedly like divorced woman who's
kind of playing the field,
screwing her way through South Florida.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like towards the end, it's almost like she's acting like she could just go back to her old life and like forget about all that other stuff that she did.
She got it out of her system.
She almost wasn't taking charge of or even responsibility for the fact that she was kind of a bad person. Like she was kind of being a bad person. She was actively trying to engage people's spouse, like right in front of, the main guy's daughter.
But I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Are they really? Is she the bad person if she's single and basically being herself? Isn't it really the other people are bad for being tempted enough to do that? Because obviously they got some shade going on.
It is, but she knew.
Well,
so I think they both have guilt. Yes, if the person who shouldn't do the thing does the thing, ultimately it was their decision to do the thing or not do the thing. But I really do think there's responsibility on sort of the seductive party when his wife is like there. I don't know. It was just like she was a good character. I really liked her outfits. I loved her jewelry. I thought that was so good. But she wasn't like a great person. But then it made me think, well, Tony Rome wasn't the best person either. So maybe like, he was kind of pursuing her for a while. There was like a thread going through this film. Like, oh, maybe they would get to the place where not together permanently, but just like together. Speaking
of not great people, I would argue that Ann Archer was still better than the spoiled brat.
Oh, the daughter was worse.
Yeah,
the daughter was terrible too. I think that the thing that really was so interesting about this film, I don't know if you're going to ask this anyway, so I might be like jumping ahead. That scene you told me that has nothing to do with the film really, and it didn't. Some older lady walked into Tony Rome's office.
About her cat.
So this older lady who has nothing to do with any of the characters walks into Tony Rome's office at some point, like in the middle or to early part of the film, and basically says to him, "Hey, I need like help finding my cat."
No, my pussy cat.
Right. I'm just going to not say it yet. So that's weird. It seemed like it was going to be this fast segue, but they kept saying that word over and over and over and over again, clearly on purpose. Like they wanted to say the P word as much as they possibly could, and they stopped talking about a cat after a while. They let the cat part off.
Right.
They lopped off the cat and just talked about that. And I just thought it was like, why are they doing that? It was kind of bizarre. It was definitely, to me, the most noteworthy and strange thing in the entire film.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, and because, like, behind the scenes, behind the curtain, folks, about how I do these episodes, I do my part of what you just heard, and then I interview people afterwards. Lindsay doesn't know that I've already discussed, and I'm going to bring it up again. The reason they brought that up, it has absolutely nothing to do with the plot. But by the late 60s, society was changing. People were getting more kind of real, and films were changing too. So Sinatra was tired of censorship of films that had been rampant since the Hays Code. And so by using the double entendre, I was kind of beating you over the head. Like anyone now, it's still tame. But back then, it is kind of, controversial. So they still got away with basically saying pussy instead of pussy cat.
Like 100 times.
Right, but again, a couple years later, or actually that same year, you'd see Bonnie and Clyde and Rosemary's Baby, and so those films are way more extreme
and they are.
for the time.
And
so.
I am anti-censorship, so I don't support what the old school, like Hollywood, whatever was doing when they were censoring content. But what I think was such a strange juxtaposition then with this film is that they were taking that kind of strong stance on censorship in this like moment in time they literally created to do so in the film. But yet when you look at the film, like when you see where it is in the 60s and how South Florida looks at the time and all of that, it's almost to kind of the, peace, love, hippie time in the 60s, but not quite. Yeah. So it still
might not have made its way to Florida
No,
yet.
It still feels really kind of innocent in this strange way. And then you've got this weird, like, pussy scene. It was just so odd because I could understand if you were, like, in the film, it looked like times had changed and shifted to what we think of when we think of the 60s. It didn't quite do that. I mean, this film came out in, 67?
Yeah.
I laugh because that was the year of my mother's prom. And it's like that was still kind of wholesome-y-ish, like right on that cusp of the change. And this film looks like the before, not the after. Yeah. So it was so weird to see it that way and then, like, have that scene.
I don't know. Most people are going to see this movie or not see it because Frank Sinatra. That's the whole reason to see this.
Yeah,
it's a typical detective story. I think the story's fine. Did you figure out the ending? Like, did you kind of see this coming, or was it just kind of like I'm along with the ride? I like Frank Sinatra.
I mean, I knew something was weird about the people who were ultimately involved when you got to one particular scene.
Sure.
And where you realized like something was off. You're like, what the heck is this? It seemed kind of out of place, and at first I didn't even know who these individuals were. Then I realized who they were. So I think a part of me believed there was some involvement there at the time. So I can't say like I absolutely fully predicted it. But the one thing the film did do that was kind of interesting is it did a good job casting shadows of, guilt or doubt over several people. So, like, at one point...
You don't know, yeah.
You're not sure if it's the daughter. You're not sure if it's the son-in-law. You're not sure if it's the newer, younger wife. You're not sure if it's Ann Archer. You're not sure who the heck it is because there's, like, a mark against...
Which is
like,
good.
All of these people. So that part was pretty good. I think... I assumed it would probably go the way that it did, but they did hide it well. Yeah.
I think the other thing, to kind of wrap up like this, you kind of got a kick at this film because you spent a lot of time in Florida, so you were kind of looking around how things really didn't change that much in, 30 years?
Well,
yeah.
I mean, things definitely changed. So,
but some of the sites did not.
But, like, it's really cool to see them drive up to the Hotel Fontainebleau, which I had been going to when I was really young, and it was like the very like fancy chic hotel at the time down there, and it was really cool to see them drive up to that hotel or to see them, going over Biscayne Bay or seeing different signs on the causeway or whatnot, or seeing the like old street views of Miami Beach back in the 60s, because it's not the same when you look at it today. However, when they're kind of doing those views a little bit above the beach and the street and you're kind of looking down, you can see the footprint of like, oh yeah, hey, I totally know where all this stuff is if you've gone there often. Like I have, just by looking at it and say, oh gosh, look at how much they've put there. Or in some cases, like the way the hotels feel down there on Miami Beach, for any of your listeners who are like familiar with it and go there and have stayed there, they all kind of have, right along the beach, they all kind of have this like interesting vibe to them. And even in this film, you can see that those hotel rooms, like the doors that seem like they should be more private but kind of aren't, like they have like those slatted, tops. It just, some of that is still very much there. And people who I knew that went to Florida a lot, we would joke, like, staying at a few of these hotels is almost like a rite of passage. Like, you can't say you've stayed down there until you've, like, hit up a few of these and been like forced to stay there. So you could see some of that in the way that it looked in the 60s, which was kind of interesting.
So would you rewatch this film again to see if you missed anything, or are you kind of like one and done, and would you recommend this?
I think I'd be more likely to watch it not because I missed anything, but because I really do think that's a place I have a lot of familiarity, and it's interesting to see if I see more or I missed more. And I also kind of like the look and feel of the clothing and the time period and all that. Okay. It was right before that innocence went away. So I might not watch it again, but if I did, it would be for that. And could I recommend it? I mean, Frank Sinatra's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. I guess it's hard to argue, like, seeing him doing him just as a PI instead of a singer. It's not so bad. There's worse.
So now that I also told you, there is a sequel called Lady in Cement with Raquel Welch. Are you interested in seeing that now?
Is he in it too?
Yeah, it's a sequel. So it's yeah.
I guess I would see it just to see what happened. What year did that come out?
The next year.
Oh, well then I guess because it's in Florida also? Or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, then I would watch it just because I kind of want to see the scenes change and
to see happens. The very attractive Raquel Welch.
Yeah, I mean when she was young, yeah. But she was probably, in her 20s then?
Let's double check. She would have been about 28.
Okay. Yeah, I think it would have been interesting to see what happened a year later. You know, what is he doing now?
Well, good. When I get to Lady in Cement in 2042, we'll talk about it.
I guess we'll talk about it then. Wow, we got a long road to hoe.
Got a lot of movies.
We do.
If you enjoy this podcast and are an iTunes user, please do the show a favor and head on over to the official iTunes page for Damn Good Movie Memories. Be sure to leave a rating and a review. This will allow the show to appear higher in the algorithm and spread the joy of this podcast to the masses. If you are not an iTunes user, you can still listen and subscribe on Podbean at damngoodmoviememories.podbean.com. Be sure to like us on Facebook under our Damn Good Movie Memories page. You can also listen to a limited number of episodes on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and be sure to tune in next week for an all-new episode of Damn Good Movie Memories.